Welcome, everyone, to the August 25th edition of Signals from Mars. I'm your host, Victor. And for this week, we have a very special episode on AC/DC. My patrons have voted. They've all submitted their top 10 AC/DC albums. This was neck and neck all week. There were six albums that could have easily taken number one. And the last 2 days, it all kind of got straightened out. So we're going to talk about all 16 AC/DC studio albums because they all got voted on. So
Really?
uh, we have a panel of people from all around the world here. We have Brad Dahl, for now still in Utah. We have Ed Ferguson in Kentucky. We have Johan in Sweden. Metal Dan in California. Jeremy Problem Child Weltman in the UK. And you're in the same house in Spain. You have me and my two kids, Roman and Adrian. So, how's everyone doing tonight?
Great.
Great.
Awesome. So we're mixing the old with the new here. We often hear about how young people don't like listening to the music that we like listening to. Both of my kids were listening to some Testament earlier today. So outside of that, they've been listening to plenty of AC/DC, putting their list together. So we're going to start things off here in a second, but we've got one of the bands where a lot of people aren't split so much because Bond died, but I think there's a lot of people that have a preference and maybe give Brian Johnson more of a pass because of the fact that Bond died, and it isn't a Van Halen situation, for example, with David Lee Roth and Sammy, with one being replaced for the other and flip-flopping and this and that. So there's two things I think that we need to take into account. One is what album ends up being number one, and who of the two singers have more albums in the top 10. So we'll see. We're going to kick things off right now. Album number 16. Rock or Bust?
Yeah.
Who wants to mention something about Rock or Bust?
I'll say something since I just listened to it last night.
All right.
I mean, musically, it's kind of okay, but lyrically, it's kind of like they didn't write a lot of lyrics. Kind of went with just chanting the chorus over, or the title of the song over and over. So it kind of just felt like they didn't really put a lot of work into it. I mean, it's a decent sounding album, but to me, it didn't make my top 10.
Correct. Yeah, it's not on mine either, and it's got to be probably the last one on all agreed. The album's not great, but the highlighted song is Caught with Your Pants Down. While the lyrics are stupid, it's just a great riff.
It is a great riff. You're not wrong, Dan.
Yeah.
There's a lot of great riffs on there, but it's just I think lyrically, I don't know what was going on there.
Well, I mean, a lot of people consider maybe Bond to be a little bit more thrifty with his words, whereas maybe Brian is a little bit more blunt with what he has to say.
Let me cut your cake with my knife.
For example, but that's debatable.
It's more subtle. Yeah.
We'll get to that later on. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it because there are some theories on that
We'll
as well.
cut that cake when we get to it. You mean?
We'll cut that cake when we get to it. There you go. All right. Moving on here. Number 15. Black Ice. The album that came out right before Rock or Bust.
Yeah.
Anyone want to speak on Black Ice?
I think it was a better album than Rock or Bust. I think sound wise it was pretty darn good. The songs seemed like they actually worked on them. I thought it was a good listen. Didn't make my top 10 though, but I didn't. I'm just gonna tell you, there are none of these albums that I was like, I can't listen to this anymore. So
Right, and I think that's a point. That's something that I spoke to Chris Vaglio, who's one of the patrons as well. He mentioned how some of these albums maybe aren't as strong as others, but still have good
It's still
material on them.
yeah,
They still have, 2 to 3 songs that are pretty good on each of them. And he pointed out how, especially the last few albums, sonically all sounded really good, regardless whether the material was as good or not. Dan,
Yeah.
go ahead.
well,
So to me, it made my top 10 list. I barely got it in there. Yeah, I think it's a good album. It has some good songs. I really like Big Jack. It's
that
a
is the
it's a
best- I
hit.
think that's the best song on it.
Anything Goes is a great song, and War Machine. It's an anthem. So there's enough in there for it to be a quality album.
So Dan, do you like it well enough to listen to 16 tracks worth of Black Ice AC/DC?
Yeah, I know it's a long
much.
album.
Yeah.
Probably 10 out of 16. But yeah, I could listen to that album again. I kind of
Yeah.
enjoy that one.
Cool.
Now, that's the last one that Malcolm played on, correct?
You're probably right.
Okay, so I'm wondering if at that point they thought Malcolm was deteriorating, maybe because he had dementia in the end. That isn't something where, pardon the pun, you don't just flip the switch and it just happens. People start to deteriorate little by little. So I'm wondering if that was a case where they saw the writing on the wall and said, let's record as many songs as we can.
That's a good point, because you're right. That is the last album he's on.
It looks like Steve Young actually played on. Oh no, I'm looking at the wrong one. That's Rock or Bust. Black Ice. Okay.
Yeah, why there's so many songs, I don't remember. I was surprised at that. It didn't need that many, but I've listed the highlighted songs, and they're good enough. Miss Malcolm.
Yeah, I actually really like Stormy Mayday off of this. It's kind of different for them with the slide guitar, but that's
All right.
kind of why that song has always kind of stood out to me.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting thing to throw in there after all these years. I don't know who played that, but
because they're obviously heavily influenced by the blues.
Oh, yeah, huge.
So, I mean, if we're going to talk about a band that really injected blues into hard rock or metal, it's AC/DC. I mean, let's be honest. So that is very interesting because, I mean, you look at Led Zeppelin, you look at how many people copied what Jimmy Page did on the slide, especially within the hair metal genre, and then bands like Tesla and stuff like that did it. So for one of the Young brothers to all of a sudden whip out a slide after like 40 years was kind of interesting. So, all right, so let's see. Do we follow kind of a trend here? And I will say that this next album got a lot more votes than the first two that were on the list here. So at number 14, actually got more votes than both of those albums combined. Should say that.
Wow.
Stiff Upper Lip.
Yeah.
So this album came out in 2001.
2000.
2000?
Yes.
Okay, excuse me. Thank you for the correction.
Yeah, nice.
Welcome.
Yeah, 2000.
Very good, kids.
But
Thanks.
yeah, so the thing that always stood out to me from this album was when 9/11 happened, they banned a lot of this. Well, they banned the singles off of this, off of the radio. Especially "Safe in New York City" was the last song that they brought back out of all of these because the title track, "Satellite Blues" and "Safe in New York City" got played a lot in the area where I was living at the time. And I remember when the 6 months had passed, the station that we listened to at my job said they actually explained it on the air. They said this song could not be played due to the terrorist attacks of 9/11. Somebody put this on a list saying that it may be offensive to people. 6 months have passed. We can now play this song again. And they played it, I don't know how many times that day. And they made a point of it saying, hey, the song is what we all feel. We feel that we're safe in New York City and we're with New York and so on and so forth. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question since you were there on
Right.
9/11. Do you find any of these songs on this album offensive or a little too soon?
I don't find any music at all offensive. When it came to that, I thought it was a lot like the Satanic Panic movement in the 80s, where people were looking at something to blame, or people were, I don't know, too much time on their hands. Look, they banned albums by a lot of different bands. And if you want to look at something that was kind of egregious, Machine Head had released a single called "Crashing Around You," and the chorus to the song was "Your whole world comes crashing around you." And Roadrunner instantly pulled all publicity on that album because of it. They were dropped shortly thereafter because of it. That could probably be what I could see as being the most harming or damning, but they had nothing to do with that.
Yeah.
They didn't plan with a jihadist to do something through their lyrics. I mean, to me, that's silly. It's no different again than what the PMRC was trying to do. What every school shooting that's been blamed on music and whatnot. I think it's the same thing. And at the end of the day, Chris Rock said it best. What was Hitler listening to? Are we now gonna ban Brahms and Beethoven and stuff like that because that was his favorite music? So it's
I want that on a T-shirt.
well,
No, you don't.
Oh,
No, you don't.
right. All right.
come on, I'll be in Idaho.
Yeah, for me, for that album, the only song that I really recognize is "Stiff Upper Lip" or is "Safe in New York City." It's not much for me, but maybe somebody else has a better opinion on that album.
Yeah, I'll say because I listened to this last night. When it first started out, I thought the songs were kind of like, pretty average. But something happened about 4 or 5 songs in, and I was driving through a dark canyon, really windy and stuff. And I was like, man, this is really groovy stuff. I mean, it's kind of broken down, kind of almost, very kind of old school bluesy, where you don't really have the drums doing a whole lot. But it was cool. It was good. It was really good. It had me in a good vibe. I'm like, yeah, this album's going to make my list. So that's why I made it number 10 on my list, because it just made me feel good. So there you go.
Cool. All right. Let's move on here to number 13. Let me find the actual release date so I'm not corrected again.
Can you throw a Rush album here so we can hear from Johan?
Oh, it was funny. I put all the AC/DC albums behind me today. I didn't wait until the last second. And as I'm going through everything, Rush albums kept coming up. I'm thinking Johan is channeling. He's sending his good vibrations my way here. At number 13, with puffed up hair, a Floyd Rose in an SG, and different production sound,
Fly on the Wall.
Fly on the
Oh.
Wall, released in let's see here, released in June 28th. It's actually my son Roman's birthday, June 28th,
Nice.
19.
Happy birthday to you.
But anyway, this I remember was a big deal for me because it was AC/DC debuting a video on MTV. It was the first time that they had done it. And also it had the animation mixed in with live action footage. So you had the fly all over the it was the Sync the Pink video, which was also like a new concept. So who wants to mention something about Fly on the Wall? Go ahead, Johan.
Yeah. Hey, I'm here. It's. I think it's a. I like that album. It's 80s production and so, but I think when it came, as you said, Victor, it felt fresh. It felt like AC/DC are back in the game. You know, it was. Yeah, and they. I mean, here in Sweden, they sold out, of course, Stockholm and Gothenburg. So it's a good album, and perhaps not the best, but yeah, I like it.
Dan, go ahead.
So this is the album that probably excited me the most out of this whole experience, which was a headache of a homework assignment of trying to put a top 10 list of AC/DC albums, probably one of the best bands ever. This album, while I knew when it came out, I remember then, I appreciate it more now as I've gotten older. I've probably listened to this album now a dozen times over and over, keep going back to it, and the songs just keep growing on me. So here we go. I got something out of this homework assignment by really loving this album more than ever before, and I'd put it in my replay list now from now on.
Nice.
The song First Blood, I take out the first 28 seconds and just let Brian rip into it. But other than that, the songs are catchy and groovy. Great guitars by the Youngs. The lyrics are great. Phenomenal album. I probably should have had it higher on my list. That's how much I love this album now. That's it.
Wow, cool.
Yeah.
Ed, for you, what was it like to hear them with a slightly different production sound and see them trying a few things here that they hadn't done in the past?
Yeah, it was a bit of a letdown. I'm listening to this compared to Blow Up Your Video today. You notice that on this record, even though the guitars were still out there and in your face, the vocals got that big reverb sound on it. And then on Blow Up Your Video, they kind of took another step and put that more reverby sound on the guitars as well. So this was kind of like a transition in their sound that was kind of disappointing compared to those Mutt Lange records. But, I was 15, 1985. You listen to what you can get. So even if you're disappointed with a record, even like I was with the Motley Crue album that year, that's still what I listened to all summer long because that's what I had. And I found, just like Dan said some great words about the record. I agree with it all. And like him, I've grown to like it more and more over time. And sometimes it's a refreshing record to put on. And, I Flick of the Switch is a record that is probably more my style, but I'm kind of surprised at how much I've listened to Fly on the Wall now compared to maybe Flick of the Switch.
Wow.
So good album, and Dan had some great comments.
Excellent. All right. So at number 12 is an album that Ed just mentioned.
Blow Up Your Video.
Blow Up Your Video came out in January of 1988.
88.
And for me, obviously Heatseeker had come out, was the first single off of this. And Iron Maiden's Seventh Son of a Seventh Son came out. If not the same day, it came out a few weeks apart. because on Fridays, the radio station that I listened to was WNEW out of New York, and you had Scott Muni, and Scott Muni had a show called Things from England, and Scott Muni had a real deep voice. This is Scott Muni with Things from England, and next we have AC/DC and Blow Up Your. No, that's. I keep forgetting that this doesn't have a title track. I always thought that that's the way I want my rock and roll, was kind of like the title track to this. So he played Iron Maiden's "Can I Play with Madness" and this back to back, and that's always stuck in my mind because it was so cool. Because at the time, AC/DC obviously wasn't getting the same play that they were previous to that with the huge albums that they had. So to me, it was a big deal that a newer AC/DC song was getting on the radio. That's why I always have a certain spot, in my heart for Blow Up Your Video. Anyone else want to mention something about this album?
This is
Yeah, go ahead, Johan. Go right ahead.
This one is one of my personal favorites because I bought concert tickets almost at the same times as the dates for the album. It was similar to the album release. So this is my first real AC/DC, when I met,
Introduced.
Yes, thank you, Victor. To AC/DC live. I think the album is great. I listened to it now this week again. Like a song like "Two's Up." That's a great hard rock song. This is one of my favorite albums because the first time I saw them, and I like the sound of it, as well as "Fly on the Wall." It felt fresh because I was 15 or 16. So,
Right.
yeah, it was. Yeah, I love this album. It's a great album.
How was the concert, Johan?
5+, Dokken opened. Great.
Oh.
Yeah. Gothenburg, packed stadium. Yeah.
Yeah. Wish I could have been there.
Yep.
Ed, go ahead.
This is probably the first album they put out that I didn't rush out and buy because I was spending too much time listening to Testament, Anthrax, Metallica, all those bands at that time. But they had the videos on MTV all the time for this record, so I was still hearing all the hit songs. And then I too saw them live, the one and only time I saw them. They came here, unfortunately not with Dokken. Boy, that would have been great. I had to sit through LA Guns, which was not my thing. But and also, sadly, Malcolm was in a treatment center, so I didn't get to see him either.
Right.
Oh,
But
no.
I was still thrilled to be there and to witness Angus Young, live, and they did all the great tunes they do. To see Hell's Bells live was great. I'll never forget it. I was 18 at the time, so that's a big teenage memory for me too. So even though I didn't care that much for this record, it has memories tied to it, and I'm enjoying it as I get older.
So this one too is also a grower that I appreciated more. I didn't have room for it in my 10, but I think it could be there as well too. It's a dumb album title and it's a dumb cover for an album. That hurts it. But the songs are there. Ending with "This Means War," that's a good one. And give me some of that rough stuff. There's and "Kissing Dynamite." Come on. So there's just a great round of songs. I could listen to the album more now and appreciate it more now than when it first came out.
It's funny, Dan, you'd say that because I hadn't heard the album till just the other day. And maybe it was last night even. But yeah, looking at the cover, I was expecting this to be really goofy, and it wasn't. I was like, well, yeah, it's like the cover was really not. I don't know whose idea it was, but bad idea. And the title too, "Blow Up Your Video." It just sounded like a. I mean, I realize it's a line out of the song, but I think they could have done better.
This must have been the war with MTV or whatever going on at the time. I imagine it was the industry of where they were at in their mind, and they weren't visioning ahead, and they were just stuck in the moment. I assume, yeah, because I don't think I bought it when it came out, simply because of how dumb it looked. But the songs are there.
Yeah, I think it's along those lines where MTV was kind of taking over for radio, so it was almost like the hard rock equivalent of Video Killed the Radio Star.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think they were trying to go for that without realizing that in a few years the cover would look kind of goofy.
Yeah.
My brother did see them on this tour, similar deal as Ed with LA Guns. And yeah, and when you mentioned that Steve Young had played with them, I remember that he had mentioned that as well. So I'm trying to think. I found an old T-shirt that my brother had from the concert, and it was Angus, similar to the album cover, but instead of like being in front of the video, I think he was in front of a missile because of Heatseeker.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good first song on the album.
Yeah.
Good way to start it out. Yeah, they got it all there. They just messed up the what the title is. So
Yeah.
I'm surprised Heatseeker hasn't gotten more play in their set list years after, because I thought similar. It was a good song to kick off a show, or maybe after playing one of the more bluesier tracks, you come back with Heatseeker to kind of get people back, pumped up and going again. So,
Anybody remember what they opened the show with on this tour?
go ahead.
Yeah, they open with Who Made Who.
oh,
Did they?
Oh, good one. Good opener.
Yeah, that was when the second guitar came in. Angus came up in an elevator behind the stage, so it was that was
Very cool.
very cool. Yeah.
One thing about AC/DC I find interesting in all of their artwork is that Angus is the only one who gets on the album covers.
Pretty much.
Right? You wrong about
he's
this?
kind of they made him the mascot with the uniform.
Yeah.
It's like they're a band that they didn't have like an Eddie or something. They just had Angus, and he was in the band.
And thankfully, or whatever, he embraced it rather than shy away from it.
Right.
Will he do it as a 70-year-old man in Indio at next 2 months? I don't. Yes, he will.
Of course he will. He'll probably still moon everybody too.
I hope he does.
That's the moneymaker.
I hope Brian can still support him. Put him on his shoulders. That little guy. He's small like me. And
He's a
the
wingman.
kids.
He's got a big heart.
Yeah, so I want to say a quick hello to Jose in the chat, who's joining us as well. Also, quickly, just remember, guys, that now, of course, this disappeared. But like last week, you can support the show by checking out the merch. So now and then I will be flashing the QR codes for the merch. If anyone is so inclined to pick something up, scan the QR code and it will take you right to the merch store, and it will help the show out tremendously.
It's a great looking shirt.
Absolutely. Great looking logo that Anthony Mackie designed for us. All right. So at number 11, an album for the tour in which I first saw them on. It is Ballbreaker. Album came out in
95.
95. All right. So the joke for us seeing seeing them play at the old Brendan Byrne Arena, Continental Airlines Arena, Izod Center, and however other names the damn arena had, is that we said from that show that we got to see Phil Rudd on TV, because from where we were seated, where the amps and the lights were, you could only see him on the video screen. You could see everyone else, but you couldn't see Phil Rudd. They opened that tour up with Back in Black.
Nice.
So it was kind of interesting and different, we thought, but was a great show. Had Beavis and Butthead come on the video screen beforehand and get taken into a back room by the quote-unquote ball breaker, and it made for everyone to get all riled up and ready for the show. It was pretty cool. We actually had on that tour, we had The Poor open up, and The Poor had a family connection to them as well, because the lead singer was I believe Malcolm's nephew or something like that. The Poor's only remotely big song in the US, they're an Australian band as well, was a song called More Wine Waiter Please. So I don't know if any of you guys remember that song, but it got airplay in New York, and then once our local station Q104 went back to classic rock and stopped playing newer music, it disappeared altogether. But anyway, Ballbreaker at 11. Who wants to mention something about Ballbreaker?
I think it got a much better production than the last record, with Rick Rubin coming in. You know,
Right.
he gave it a big sound again.
Yeah.
That helped. That helps me like it. And it's got good tracks on it too. This one and Stiff Upper Lip are probably my two favorite of the, everything from that point on. I have a hard time enjoying the last three that they released. But, this one sounds good and has some good tracks. It's kind of like Stiff Upper Lip. It's got a lot of that boogie sound with, of course, it's always blues with AC/DC.
Yeah.
Right.
I kind of like the Blow Up Your Video. I expected, because of the title, that I was going to be stupid, but it wasn't. In fact, I really like this album a lot. And I find it very conspicuous that Jeremy's being so quiet about all this. Is he not going to come jumping in here till we get to the Bon albums? Is that what he's waiting for? Is he
Maybe.
okay?
Maybe.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
Yeah, I think he's waiting his turn till the top 10, and then that's
Okay.
he's saving himself.
I'm real curious to hear what he thinks about these albums that he's not talking about, or is he?
Yeah.
being-
Well, they're not my favorite albums. Most of these albums I didn't vote
Sure,
for. I think I voted for Stiff Upper Lip in my top 10, but none of the others. And to be honest, it was a bit of a wasted time for me, after sort of 83 onwards. Didn't really like a lot of the stuff they brought out, to be honest. I thought they were just rehashing the formula. So, to me, there's not a great deal of excitement as the 80s and sort of into the 2000s went on. So I'm not surprised that those 6 albums are, they're all between 85 and 2014, aren't they?
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay.
What's it like in the UK when they're considered an Australian band, considering most of the members are born in the UK?
Yeah, in Scotland, yeah. Well, apart from Brian Johnson, of course, who's a Geordie.
Right.
But yeah. But what's the question? How are they appreciated? Or
Yeah, do British people get pissed off that they're considered an Australian band as opposed to a UK band, or do they not care?
They don't care. They absolutely love the band here. I mean, they're probably the top rock band in the UK. I mean, I don't know anybody who doesn't know AC/DC. In fact, I asked my dad today, who's 83, have you ever heard of AC/DC? And bear in mind that he's never heard any heavy metal band or Kiss or anyone. But he said, yeah, I've heard of AC/DC.
Everybody knows AC/DC. Everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your father wasn't an electrician, was he?
He kind of was, yeah.
I have a question. You know, speaking of the band and how they're taken globally, they're from Australia. Or, no, sorry, they're not. Wait. Yes. In Australia, on the Conan O'Brien special that they had, they said they pronounce it Akadaka.
Mhm.
Is that true or bullshit? I guess I got to ask the guys from Airborne one day.
There you go.
I'm sure that you could call them AC/DC, but they're probably called Akadaka as well by people there. You also have to figure that in Australia, they also say Adidas. So
That's how my dad told me, and he's from Germany, so that's the thing.
well, and it's a German company, so
Mhm.
you would know. All right, so let's recap 16 through 11 quickly here. At 16, we had Rock or Bust. 15, Black Ice. Let's see, 14, Stiff Upper Lip. 13, Fly on a Wall. 12, Blow Up Your Video. 11, Ball Breaker. And at 10, I don't know, man. This album doesn't get as much love as some of the others, but I think the title track to this has a quintessential opening riff to it that every time that I listen to it, that riff and that chorus gets stuck in my head. And the opposite of having an all black album is having an all white album, and that is Flick of the Switch. So we have Flick of the Switch, which came out in 83. All right, Ed, go ahead.
So this is the first one they did without Mutt.
It shows.
They produced it themselves.
Yeah, the guitars sound awful, in my
So you
opinion.
can definitely tell the different sound. What did you say, Brad?
I thought the guitars sound awful on this album. I mean,
Really?
they did.
I've never heard anybody say that about it.
Well, there you go.
It's got more of a garage rock
Yeah.
sound, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah.
Definitely less produced,
Mhm.
which I think a lot of people enjoy. I wish they had kind of kept that sound on the next two records. I think Blow Up Your Video would sound a lot better with that Flick of the Switch production even. But
No, I agree with Brad. It's the guitars that are muddy, and that's the reason why the album flopped as it did when it came out. It had a different sound than the other ones, and we all panned it growing up when it came out. And also, the song order is messed up. The Flick of the Switch should be the opening song, so they screwed up. I don't know what they were thinking. So, and there's some good songs on it, but that's the problem with the album. It's a muddier sound.
Johan loves this record, I think.
Yeah, I do. It's for me, it's an ACD album for, for, let's see, I pronounce this right, but for connoisseurs.
Yeah.
Connoisseurs, yeah.
Connoisseurs,
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think this is a great rock and roll album. I think it's the sound of it is like they made it at home, but great songs and a feel to it. I think it's better now in 2023 than it was in 2083 when it was released. So 1983, but I think this is a great album, and it's a grower. It's it has something. I love this album. It is it's like for, as I said, for connoisseurs, it's like it's good. It's really good. I don't.
I'll listen to it again.
What do you guys think?
Yeah, I think the songs are better than on the previous album. To be honest, I think it's the actual songs are an improvement overall. So I'd agree with you. I quite like it.
Roman, you're shaking your head. You're agreeing. What's your thoughts on Flick of the Switch?
I don't know. I just like the music in this album.
Is there any song that stands out to you off of the album?
I think it's Badlands.
Badlands?
Yes.
Oh no, I think it was that song.
Okay. Yeah, I think that they played Badlands live when they toured this, if I'm not mistaken. So cool.
Yeah, Landslide and Guns for Hire. And then, of course, the number 3 track that should have been take out the first 2 and put that in. You have a better album. Flick of the Switch.
Hmm.
And it's a good album cover.
Yeah.
Cool.
But for the record, I'm surprised that in this community, I thought that Flick of the Switch would be higher.
Me too.
Yep.
Yeah, I think what happens in the end is what we've always talked about. You have to consider what albums are ahead of it.
Yep.
Also, a lot of it also has to do with when you caught on with the band, and we'll come back to that in a few choices, as you guys will see. But anyway, all right. At number 10 there is Flick of the Switch. So first album at number or within the top 10 is a Brian Johnson album. Let's see. At number 9. Hold on. What are you trying to say by chat?
That somebody is in the chat, I mean.
Yeah. I think it's going to be Power Up.
Oh.
I'm curious
Yeah,
how high it's going to
certainly.
go.
The chat is Tony Espin. Flick of the Switch was my first AC/DC album. See that? So I'm sure, Tony, the album probably is very special for you because of that. Cool. Let's see. Let's move forward here at 9. Dan is saying that he thinks it will be Power Up.
I'm kind of impressed Power Up's going to make the top 10.
Me too.
Well, we're in the top
Me
10.
too.
We are in the top 10 at number 9. An album that kind of rejuvenated their popularity.
Ooh.
I'm wrong.
A new drummer as well.
It's not Power Up.
It's not Power.
Power Up.
The Razor's Edge.
The Razor's Edge.
Yeah.
That's a good album.
This album was fucking massive.
Yes, it was.
It was huge. Although someone that is here who hates the song Thunderstruck.
Overplayed.
Romaine.
Thunderstruck, Money Talks, The Razor's Edge, Are You Ready, Mistress for Christmas. All these songs got a lot of airplay, at least in the New York area. Go ahead, Adrian.
This song was not in my this album wasn't in my top 5 because there were more albums that I loved.
There were other albums that you loved more than this one.
Yeah.
But
That's
there's
weird.
But there are songs off of this, like Thunderstruck, like Are You Ready, that you still play a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Let's see. So
Wait. Do you want a Mistress for Christmas?
That's a silly song.
It is. I was when I heard that, I was like, really, guys?
Well, it was Mistress for Christmas and the Ramones' Merry Christmas, I Don't Want to Fight, that they'd always play back to back on New York radio. So,
Thunderstruck, the guitar riff influenced many bands. Many bands ripped that off years later. Angus is ahead of his time when he does it. It's used everywhere. They make a lot of money off of that. But Fire Your Guns, they should also play that one a lot because that Fire Your Guns could be in any of the AC/DC albums, from Bond to Today with Brian.
Yeah, this album again, like I said, was a huge return to form for them from a popularity standpoint because they were everywhere with this. They were all over MTV. It allowed them to headline, Donington and put out that live album that they recorded at Donington, if I'm not mistaken. Jeremy, is that correct? That album does come from that show, right?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. And to their credit, that's like one of the we've talked about this a lot lately, the whole live album thing. I think AC/DC Live is like an end of an era to an extent because, I mean, there are plenty of big time live albums from the 70s. There's a few from the 80s. And then after this live album, which was pretty live because you hear Angus break strings and stuff like that and go out of tune in certain spots. After this, I think live albums just became very homogenized and boring, where it was, all right, big deal. I'll just listen to the live album, the studio album, which kind of sounds better anyway. A lot of these live albums became kind of lifeless. Didn't sound live at all. And some of the ones that were re-recorded in the 70s sounded very live and very full of life, whereas a lot of what came out after just kind of didn't. So anyway, I'm yammering here about Razor's Edge. Anyone else want to mention something about this album?
I misspoke earlier. I forgot about this album in particular. This is the album where they had a little better sounding production compared to Blow Up Your Video. Didn't have so much of the reverb and sounded much better. So I think that helped their case too, especially with the singles that were so popular off this record. Just it overall had a really good sound.
Yep, he's right.
Yeah, I think this is the first one that they recorded up in Vancouver, if I'm not mistaken.
That is correct.
Yes.
Yeah, because then after.
Fairbairn.
Yeah, Bruce Fairbairn and then Mike Frazier, who originally was the engineer, he started producing everything after. He's produced everything after Ballbreaker, basically. So, Johan, go ahead.
Yeah, I did see them on this tour in Sweden, Gothenburg as well, packed arena, and I remember that it was. You felt that they had gone to another level with Thunderstruck. I mean, it was the sound in the arena. You didn't hear Thunderstruck. You can almost hear the first song. It was amazing. It was. You felt that AC/DC have gone over the level that they used to be before. And King's X opened. King's X, yeah.
Cool.
And they didn't receive that massive, it was a different thing. But yeah, that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
Okay. Anyone else? Razor's Edge? All right. So 2 in the top 10 from Brian Johnson. At number 8, Power Up.
Wow.
So, and there are 2 people in the center of the screen here who have a lot to do with that because, like I mentioned, where you kind of jump on the train here with any band is almost always going to be your favorite or your number 1. So, for both of my kids, I know for them it was exciting. Wow, a new AC/DC album. We'd been listening to AC/DC, but they had never experienced a new AC/DC album. So for them, it was a big deal. And I remember also they were at the time playing a lot of Fortnite, and Fortnite had an AC/DC night where it was a 20-minute concert, basically.
It was like an event.
It was an event. Yeah, it was an AC/DC event where you could play, and it was AC/DC music playing in the background, and they appeared, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, the end of the Marvel season, one song
Yes.
appeared.
Okay. So what makes this album special for you, Roman?
I really like all of the songs.
Okay.
They're really good.
Okay.
And,
Adrian, for you?
It's the songs are really good. I remember hearing it when I used to play Roblox, a game about cars that I loved, and I always listened to it.
Okay. And explain from your standpoint what I just said. You guys had listened to AC/DC a lot at home, and it was, I think maybe I had played Thunderstruck for you guys, but you guys had kind of taken it from there and started discovering AC/DC on your own. What was it like when you found out, hey, they're putting out a new album? This is new music that I've never heard from them before. What was it like?
I was really surprised they were making more music because I thought they separated and they weren't going to make more music.
Okay, so for
So
you,
I was really happy that they made more music.
okay, and for you, what's some of your favorite songs? You say you like all of them, but
Yeah, my favorites are Realize, Rejection, and Witch's Pale.
okay. Adrian, what about for you? What are some?
Uh, my favorite songs are What is Fair and Realize and Why Did you, Why Did They Kick You When You're Down?
Okay, cool. The other thing too is they're not the only ones that voted for this album. I mean, this made my top 10 as well. It made a bunch of other people's lists as well, and it could be familiarity because it was the most recent release and a lot of people still have it kind of fresh in their mind, and maybe they're still playing it. I know that we still play this album from time to time, and also for a lot of people it was a return to form. I don't think anyone expected this album to be as strong as it was, in my opinion. Now, obviously not everyone loves this album, but after the few that came out before it, I mean, between Ball Breaker and now, this is my favorite album without a doubt. And going back even before that, maybe even going all the way back to Back in Black, it may be my favorite. So, Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, after listening to Black Ice and then Rock or Bust, this was very like a breath of fresh air when this album came on. I was like, okay, this is, I mean, well done, guys. I mean, it kind of bringing the best of the last 30 years and putting it on an album. And it's very nice to listen to. I enjoyed it. Yeah, it was. I got kind of fatigued with Black Ice and Rock or Bust. I was just kind of like, okay, come on, something's got to get more interesting here, and it didn't happen until this album came on.
Okay.
Very enjoyable. I enjoyed it, listening to every song.
Okay. Anyone else want to mention something about Power Up?
I think it has one of their coolest album covers.
Yeah.
It looks great.
Yep, I agree. Yeah.
Interesting. I wonder if that's.
I don't even know what's going on there in the background.
If that's
The
an
picture of the
actual,
stage, it looks like with
Yeah.
Okay.
but I wonder, is it actually a stage, because they didn't tour for this album?
maybe not. Yeah.
It came out in the middle of COVID. Maybe it's computer generated,
But
or
the coloring of that record is super
Yes.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah, having because I was listening to this stuff in the truck, and the album cover booms up on the dash,
Yeah.
and that one really that's cool. That kind of gave a good kind of red aura to the cab of the truck there at 1 a.m. and
Yeah.
it was everything. Yeah, good album. Nice job.
Okay.
Sorry, Jeremy.
I also think that the other cover is very cool.
You think it's really cool. Okay.
Yeah.
Awesome. So, all right. So 3 albums in the top 10 from Brian Johnson so far. At number 7. Oh, I messed this up, didn't I? No, I didn't. Okay. At number 7, another Brian Johnson album. For Those About to Rock. So, For Those About to Rock, obviously followed up Back in Black, which that was kind of a no-win situation because first of all, you're still kind of following up Bon, even though Back in Black came out, but there's still the hugeness of Back in Black itself. And you have to follow it up with another album. For a lot of people, Back in Black is a perfect album. So this came out in November
81, I think.
81, yeah. And you guys are saying that it was still produced by Mutt Lange. And this was one that a lot of people mentioned when they sent their lists in. More than one person said, wow, I forgot how much I really like this album. So for Those About to Rock, who wants to speak on this one? All right, Roman, go ahead.
This album, I only have one song that I really like, but that one song is really good.
What song is that?
For Those About to Rock, We Salute You.
Excellent. That's by far the most known song off of this album, obviously, because it's the song that they close all their shows with. But it's definitely a classic.
It sounds like an opening song. I mean, it's a great way to open the album. And the way it's good.
Adrian, go ahead.
What Roman said, I only like one song, that one, For Those About to Rock.
Okay. Dan, go ahead.
So, yeah, this album was kind of set up after Back in Black to not fail, but it didn't hit the same and it came out. And I think the sound, and I'm going to say the same thing as Flick of the Switch, it got a little muddier. It's not as crisp and clear as Back in Black. The songs are there, but it just doesn't have that. If they could have gotten the guitars and such just a little bit like that, it would have been even a bigger, it could have been a huge success. I think that's what hurt it. And I remember that at the time, that it just didn't sound the same. But that being said, Snowballed is a great song from the album. That's not For Those About to Rock. But when this concert, and I didn't go, I was just too young. They had Canon set up along, and this in video somewhere. So when they currently do the Canon sounds, they're audio clips that they use. Well, back in those days, they were actual, and I'm told, cannons, not with balls in it, but they fired them off, and it was the big boom. I got goosebumps just now. They fired those cannons off in the background and just nailed it, and it was what a show, you know. I wasn't there live, but I got to see it, you know, on video, and then people have talked about it. And it's like, what an experience.
Yeah, the video is a classic as well. It's in black and white, and it's exactly what you're saying. I mean, that was when pyro was pyro. It was literally, you know, the cannons were exploding. they weren't, like you said, there weren't sound samples. It wasn't, pretend fire like a lot of bands are using, like Priest, for example. It was,
Yeah.
Real fire, real fireworks were being used on stage for a lot of those sounds. So, anyone else want to mention something for those about to rock? All right. Moving on then. So far, Brian Johnson sweeping the top 10.
He's running out of gas, though.
You think?
Yeah. Or steam. Is there any songs about steam in here? You're running out of power.
There you go. That's often said throughout their catalog. All right, so at number 6, and on the 8th day, they said,
Let There Be
Let
Rock.
There Be Rock.
Oh.
All of these remaining 6 albums were in the running for number 1 until basically yesterday, where there was a clear-cut 2. But the top 6 are very, they're fairly close to one another. So, who wants to talk about Let There Be Rock?
Come on, Jeremy.
Yeah, well, it's an amazing album. Bon Scott at his best. I mean, you can't say which of the Bon Scott era albums would be top, really, because there's so many great songs on each one. I mean, just running through some of the songs on it. I mean, the Go Down starts off in a nice fashion, but you go through. You got Bad Boy Boogie. What have you got? You've got
Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be.
Hell Ain't a Bad Place to Be, and of course
What
it
a
ends
riff.
up with Whole Lot.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant. And ends up with we got A Whole Lot of Rosie on there, which is the song that we used to actually dance, or I say dance to, sort of headbang to at parties when we were kids. I mean, Whole Lot of Rosie was probably one of the most popular AC/DC songs in the UK at the time. And it still is, obviously, one of the fans' favorites when they're on tour. Great song.
And however the crowd picked it up that they're all chanting Angus as they play Rosie. I don't know what that does for Angus himself, but
and it's probably the first riff that you kind of learn on the guitar. It's one of those first ones that you learn when you're learning rock guitar, isn't it?
yes.
All right. Anyone else want to say something about Let There Be Rock? Ed,
Yeah, I will. This is my number 1 record. As much as I love Back in Black, this one has Bon Scott, and just this record to me just is the perfect representation of hard rock AC/DC. And this is also titled, or it's tied to my first memory of discovering the Metal Shop we talked about before,
Right.
the radio program.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So I was 13, or 14 in 8th grade, and I'm up late in my room. That show would come on at midnight, and I'm scanning through the radio stations in the dark, and I turned onto a station that was playing the song Let There Be Rock. And I'd heard of AC/DC, like Back in Black. I'd seen their records at friends' houses and heard people talk about, Dirty Deeds. And I'd seen the Let There Be Rock album cover in my friend's sister's bedroom, but, never really listened to it. But I quickly got a cassette tape, put that in, and I got half of the song recorded, and then a few more songs with Heavy Metal by Sammy Hagar and That Woman from Tokyo from Deep Purple. And I had this cassette tape that I listened to for the next year, just to death. But that was the first time I had heard, Let There Be Rock. And that song, I think, is their ultimate song too, #1 AC/DC song. And man, the sound of Malcolm's Gretsch in that song, especially in those opening riffs, and the way they all just come together and create that big booming "Let There Be Rock." I'm getting ready to preach to you the gospel of rock and roll. You know, have you ever seen the video? Have your kids ever seen the video to "Let There Be Rock"? You need to show that to them sometime.
It's back here.
Yeah. And then they did the movie "Let There Be Rock." I snuck out of the house one night because they were playing it at the movie theater at the mall. Went over there and saw that movie "Let There Be Rock." Snuck back in after I was done. You kids should not do that. That was bad for me to do.
I was going to say, do kids still sneak out of the house? Roman, you want to field that one?
I don't think they sneak out of the house anymore. But,
No.
I think my son did it once.
but man, how awesome it was when I was 15 sitting in that movie theater watching Angus and Bon Scott playing "Let There Be Rock" on the stage. You know, that was just thrilling. Loved it.
It was the closest thing to actually seeing them live.
Yeah, it was for me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in that box set too that you just were showing there.
Right.
Yeah.
Cool. Who else wants to say something about "Let There Be Rock"? All right. Moving on to number 5. I've always gotten the order of their albums wrong. I realized that by doing this, because I thought that this album was right before Highway to Hell, but it's actually their second album. It is Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap. Now, this was an album where, or the title track anyway, it still gets played a lot. And this was something that when I went roller skating on weekends, I'd always request either this song or Crazy Train by Ozzy. And it was probably the only rock music they would play the entire time then. Well, they'd play Queen and stuff like that from time to time, but this was the heaviest stuff that they would play if they would listen to me. So yeah, I've always had an affinity for this song, even if it did get played, or it still gets played a million times. But definitely a very important song and album. Adrian, go ahead.
I love this album. The lyrics and the cheap song is very good, and one time my favorite song was from this album.
What song is that?
Big Birds.
Oh, Big Balls, of course.
Didn't you remember?
I remember back when I was 11, 12 years old, when this record was released in 81, you know, the US edition. That's when I really started hearing a lot about AC/DC because all the kids were laughing about that song all the time. So that's funny that he brings that up.
Yeah. Go ahead, Roman.
I really like this album too, but I have 2 songs that I like more than the others.
Which songs are those?
Dirty Deeds, Done Dirt Cheap, and Big Balls.
Oh, okay.
I told you.
Similar to your brother. Dan, go ahead.
There's a stupid cover band in Hollywood. And they call themselves Gacy DC, and well, they have their own version of that song, and that's bad. So I'm gonna get off that. This is my first AC/DC album I ever purchased, or ever, and at a young age. It was it's an ugly album cover. I don't get it. That should have been changed.
It was changed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The original is like a drawing of of Angus and Bon Scott.
Mhm.
I'd never seen it before.
Oh yeah.
I don't recall that.
Yeah, they're in like a pool hall,
Right.
and they got Bond's arm enlarged with a big tattoo.
Correct.
Okay, I'm gonna look that up because what they left with is not good. But I still appreciate the album now. Rocker is a great song. Ride On, if you want a mellow groove, which is different for AC/DC, is just a chill song. But the song appreciated even more, and I'm gonna say it. Have you ever had a lap dance to Squealer? Yeah, it's naughty. There's not many lyrics to the song, and I won't go there. I got to be careful on this album, so I'm out.
I'm just trying to think of all the lap dances I've had, Dan.
Yeah.
So this is the original album cover.
Oh no.
Okay.
No, I've never seen that before.
So
No.
now do you appreciate this more?
No.
No, I think I like the other one better. I don't get the covering up the eyes. I don't understand. I mean, it's a 1970s, hotel from Orange County.
I think that has to do, or I've always thought it as being, because the song "Dirty Deeds Done Dirt Cheap" is basically talking about, murder for hire. So my interpretation always was that these were people that were lining up to hire them to commit the act. So their identities are being covered so as to not get in trouble.
The lyrics of the song are phenomenal.
Right.
They don't write them like that anymore. Yeah, and it follows a story. It's great.
Yeah. And so if you ever check out the graphic that I use for the VMR podcast exclusively on Patreon, I kind of glom that from AC/DC, but there you go.
And back then, that was so controversial. That's why they didn't release that Australian version in the U.S. That the radio stations didn't want Dirty Deeds on U.S. radio.
Wow.
Can you put that back up?
But then the AC/DC became so popular that in '81 they changed their tune and released it with the new cover and different track listing. Like this one had Jailbreak on it.
Yep. Jailbreak.
Okay. Yeah, because Jailbreak the EP didn't officially get released until
October of '84.
Yeah, after For Those About to Rock.
That's right.
84, so it's after
Flick of the Switch.
Okay. Interesting. So I wonder if that was kind of a knee-jerk reaction to, For Those About to Rock not being as big as Back in Black, and, Flick of the Switch even being less, selling even less. So they went
That's
back
a good point you were making right there.
Yeah.
Dirty Deeds probably took a lot of those sales away from For Those About to Rock.
Yeah, could be.
But For Those About to Rock still went platinum, didn't it?
Oh yeah,
2 million copies at least, and probably way more than that now.
For Those About to Rock, 5 times platinum in Australia, gold in Austria, platinum in France, platinum in Switzerland, gold in the UK, and 4 times platinum in the US.
Not too shabby.
Yeah, Flick of the Switch, just platinum. Actually, everything is platinum again up until Razor's Edge, which was 5 times platinum. See, so that's Razor's Edge is there's only 4 or 5 of these that have outsold Razor's Edge in the States.
Brad, are you going to give Squealer another listen to tonight on Yarg Metal and listen to what the lyrics are saying in the song?
Definitely.
Yeah, you're going to like it a little bit more. And that bass line, we can do that bass line. It's pretty simple, but hey, somebody ought to come up with that.
Okay. we'll make that happen
All right.
on Yard Metal.
There you go. At 4, I don't know if I've pronounced this album correctly or not, because as a kid, now let me find it. Oh shit, I didn't upload it. Hold on.
Is it Voltage? Is that what your problem is?
Yeah. Oh no, I did upload it.
Powerage?
Dumbass. I'm looking in the wrong
Must be that
spot.
one.
Yeah. As a kid, I would say Power Age. And then I interviewed Jesse Fink, who wrote the book The Youngs, and he would say Powerage.
Powerage.
So,
Eh.
Jeremy,
I've always said Power Age.
Jeremy, how'd you pronounce this in the UK?
Yeah, we always used to say powerage, as in, the powerage coming out of your socket.
Wow. Okay. See, because that's not a word that's said in the States when referring to that. So,
Yeah, I think it's probably a bit of a play on words though as well, so that you can sort of say either.
yeah. Okay. Gotcha. All right. So again, this is one that I didn't realize that came out right before Highway to Hell. It is number 4 here on the list. And again, let's see. This one only went platinum. After Let There Be Rock went double. But again, this is an album that a lot of people will tell you it's their favorite album. It has like we said before, how many songs aren't on here? Or how many songs are on Jesus? How many albums of theirs don't have at least 1 or 2 songs that people don't love? So you have Rock and Roll Damnation. You have Riff Raff, which was also a pretty well-known song. Sin City, obviously. Gone Shootin'.
Which, by the way, Gone Shootin', I still play that on Yard Metal with Jeremy introducing it.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
It's that good.
I love that song.
I need more Jeremy on Yard Metal.
And if you need a little bit of a hit to get yourself pumped up and get going out the door, you put Kicked in the Teeth again. God damn it. It's so good, loud and long and heavy. And it's exciting. It just hits you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Jeremy, why does this album stand out to you? Because obviously you picked... I picked it as my number 2 and actually made a slight mistake because I think it's actually their best album that they've ever done. The reason I think it's their best album is that there's not a filler on it, so you could just jump into any song and you'll really enjoy any single song on it. I think that they never quite matched the quality of it, to be honest, overall as an album in its entirety. Obviously there were great songs on Back in Black and Highway to Hell. We're going to talk about those in a minute, but I think it's worn well as well. I mean, it came out in 78, so it's quite a long time ago. There was obviously a bit of a controversy a little bit about it, about how maybe the guitars were just slightly out of tune, because it was kind of recorded live in the studio. But I think it sounds all the better for it. It's a proper rock and roll band doing proper rock and roll songs. And, you could probably pick 7 or 8 songs off this album and play them live. And it's a greatest hits album.
Yeah.
Perfect.
I love it.
That's the best stater right there. That's my number 1. Jeremy's got everything
said. Down Payment Blues. Awesome. It's funny you talk about guitars being out of tune, because when I had to learn some of the old AC/DC songs, none of them are tuned correctly. None of them are 440. They're all like, so I know how they did this. They went in the studio and it's kind of like, well, let's all tune to Angus, or let's all tune to Malcolm and whatever. This is before tuners. So, I mean, back in those days, we used to use a pitchfork to tune. And whatever venue we were playing, we'd go into the bathroom because it had the best acoustics. And so we'd hit that tuning fork and it would just reverberate and fill the bathroom, and then it was an A440, so we'd all get the A just right, and then go from there. But yeah, before tuners. So yeah, AC/DC, they didn't use a pitchfork. They just a tuning fork. They probably used a pitchfork.
I was going to say, I'm sure there were plenty of people that used pitchforks when they burned their albums. But
yeah, blow up your album. Okay.
Anyone else want to mention something about Powerage?
If Gun Shooting comes on, I can't turn it off, Jeremy. I got to wait till the very, very end of it. I'm just, it's
good.
It warms my heart every time I hear it because I think of you. So
look at that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting all emotional here.
It's a great song.
It is. It's great.
All right. So at number 3.
Ooh.
Do you guys think that number 3 will be a surprise?
Well, we got to have Voltage in there, right?
This was
Voltage.
Close. This was
Voltage.
Close all the way up until the end. And then the last few people voted and it just kind of slipped away. But
not because of me.
At number 3, High Voltage.
Yeah.
This also, I mean, when people told me that this was hard for them, I mean, just look at what songs are on this as well. We just mentioned for Powerage what was on there, but this has It's a Long Way to the Top, If You Want to Rock and Roll, The Jack, Livewire, TNT.
This is the Blueprint right here.
Yeah. And the song High Voltage, which was then a syndicated show, which I would hear out of New York. And what's interesting is there's technically 2 different albums called High Voltage.
Mm-hmm.
Because that's the American version.
If you ever see a copy of that Australian version when you're out record shopping, you buy that because it's worth some money.
Yeah,
it's not easy to get.
I wish. I bought it in back in the day. I actually had a copy of it. It was in my local record store, and I bought an import version of it. I do not have it any longer.
Wow,
that's too bad.
Man. Did you purposely get rid of that or no?
I cannot remember what happened to it, to be honest. In the old days, I suppose, when vinyl was going out of fashion, we kind of swapped records and got rid of records, and we didn't think, it'd be worth anything, or we probably just wanted to get rid of stuff, and it's a real shame.
I luckily do have one copy, although the cover's kind of bad, so it's not worth that much, but I'm just glad to have it. And because the track list on that album is way different. There's only maybe 3 songs that are the same between the 2, and a lot of the songs that are on Jailbreak 74 are on this original High Voltage, which they released in February of 75, I think.
Yeah, there's 2 songs that are on the international version, which are She's Got Balls and Little Over.
Love Her, yeah.
Baby Please Don't Go, Soul Stripper, and You Ain't Got a Hold on Me, and Show Business would later be included on the 74 Jailbreak EP. And then Stick Around and Love Song were never released until the Backtracks 2009 box set. So
once again, Bond with the lyrics in the song Little Lover. He sings about a wet spot, and he goes, "Was it Coca-Cola?" I love it. It's a little innuendo. It's a nice feel. The lyrics.
He was one of the greatest at that.
God, and he has little inflections of his voice when he wanted to say something, and they just leave it in. It's so good. I covered in a band TNT. I sang it. This is one of my best albums of AC/DC of all time. If you need that feel for old Bon Scott AC/DC.
Adrian, go ahead.
I love this album and a part of TNT. It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll. It's also a good song. I would put if I was to make a movie, that would be one of the songs I would put.
It's a long way to the top if you want to rock and roll.
Yes.
Okay. Roman, go ahead.
There's so many bands out there that use that for their intro tape.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I think that's a testament, though, to what that song refers to in the business, in entertainment as a whole. You know, you need to work it if you want to get there.
Yep.
So,
Also, sometimes you might see there's that album called TNT,
right.
and that has a lot of the songs that are on High Voltage. So it's like they took TNT and High Voltage and kind of selected the tracks they wanted, made the US version.
And that's interesting. I wonder if that was them or if it was the label or who ultimately decided it, you know?
There was an Australia release, there's an Australian version, just different labels at the time and how they wanted to work it and get it into the US as the mainstream to sell more records.
Gotcha. Okay. Roman, go ahead.
That used to be my favorite album from AC/DC because of TNT.
Yeah.
Good choice.
You have played TNT quite a bit.
Yeah.
All right.
Victor has told the story many times of him having to say, okay, that's enough. And I love that. Because when I was young, I played albums over and over. And I think my parents would say, okay, that's enough.
Yeah. Like I said, there are songs that are in the hundreds on my Apple Music. So, okay. So Jeremy is saying that TNT was the one that he had. All right. Cool. All right. So at number 2, the big question. There's 2 albums left. Which album? Let's see. Which album do you guys think is next? Which album do you guys think got to number 2?
It's Highway.
Jeremy, which one do you think is number 2?
I think number 2 is Back in Black.
Dan?
Highway.
Johan?
Back in Black.
Ed?
I say Highway, but you guys continually surprise me every time.
Brad?
I'm going to go Back in Black for number 2, Bob.
Adrian?
Mayonnaise on an escalator.
No, come on.
Back in Black.
Back in Black at number 2. Okay. Roman?
I don't know, maybe Back in Black.
All right. At number 2, by only 7 points, separating 2 and 1. Number 2, let me get the right cover here, is Highway to Hell.
Oh, no.
Roman, go ahead.
I'm wearing a shirt with the.
Stand up.
Okay.
See it. There it is.
Highway to Hell. All right. Who wants to mention something about Highway to Hell?
It was the first album that I ever bought by AC/DC. They were that was the album that got me into the band. Really, they were on Top of the Pops in the UK a lot at that time, and they were playing the singles off it. I remember Touch Too Much on Top of the Pops, really good song, and obviously Highway to Hell, the title track. It's just a fantastic album. I mean, they were at the peak of their game. Obviously, they just released Power Age as well, which I just talked about, and they follow it up with an album like Highway to Hell, incredible. The production on it is brilliant. It still sounds brilliant today as it did back then. And this was 1979. I mean, it's a hell of a long time ago. And it probably, got all of my friends into AC/DC at that time. And we'll talk about, what happened after that in a minute. But, wouldn't have surprised me if it was number one. Wouldn't surprise me, quite 3 or 4 of these albums would be number one. Just a great album.
Yeah, this is the first album with Mutt Lange. Up until now, their older brother George Young was had a hand in the production or the engineering of everything they had done. So this was the switch over to Mutt Lange, and he brought a different sound. And I remember the first time that I got this album, that I got to listen to this album and thinking, wow, I've heard a lot of these songs on the radio over the years, but never heard them back to back like this, and just thought about how massive this album was, from the title track to Girls Got Rhythm to Walk All Over You to Touch Too Much. Shot Down in Flames got played quite a bit. If You Want Blood, obviously. And the song that became infamous thanks to Richard Ramirez, Night Prowler. So just a huge album.
Yeah, Shot Down in Flames was another one that we played as a band. It's a simple 4 chords. It's a groover. It doesn't get enough attention. Every once in a while, it still makes it on the radio. And yeah, that Richard Ramirez, he really screwed us up. That was in my LA area. Scared the hell out of us at the time. And we thought he was out there, and they put out that Night Prowler song, and it really hit. Put the whole thing into what was going on at the time. We closed up our windows. It was scary.
I can only imagine. I've seen the Netflix documentary with I don't remember if it was solely about him or not, but it was.
No, it's about the hotel that he stayed in. Yeah, but he was a scary dude, and thankfully he's dead. But to use that song as his backing track, and then they play it on the radio, and it's kind of like, watch out, everybody. He's out there somewhere, and he's sneaking into your windows.
Yeah,
he took the whole thing on. That was a real deal in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Adrian, go ahead.
I love this album, and I don't know what song is better between That's Too Much and Highway to Hell. Because That's Too Much, I put this album higher than Back in Black.
Because of Touch Too Much. Okay. It's a great song. Go ahead, Roman.
One time in school when they were showing us a tour of, I think it was middle school.
Mm-hmm.
And we went to music class to see what they were doing, and they were playing Highway to Hell.
Yeah, there were kids actually playing the song. It wasn't that they were playing the original song. There were kids in that classroom that were playing Highway to Hell for you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was pretty neat all onto itself. Anyone else want to mention something about Highway to Hell?
No.
All right. So we're going to get on to number 1. No secret as to what's left. But real quickly here, let's just count everything down before getting to 1. 16, Rock or Bust. Black Ice at 15. Stiff Upper Lip, 14. Fly on the Wall, 13. Blow Up Your Video, 12. Ball Breaker, 11. Flick of the Switch, 10. Razor's Edge, 9. Power Up, 8. For Those About to Rock, 7. Let There Be Rock, 6. Dirty Deeds, 5. Power Age, 4. High Voltage, 3. Highway to Hell 2, and making the top 10, an even split of 5 albums by Bon Scott and 5 albums by Brian Johnson. Number 1 is Back in Black. It is no secret that this is one of the biggest selling albums of all time. This was my introduction to, and I'm trying to think if I knew Highway to Hell or Dirty Deeds before this, but my brother bought Back in Black. and it's an album that we've had since the 70s at home, obviously, since it came out. 70s or 80s? This came out in 80 or 79?
80.
80. Okay, my bad.
July of 80.
So we've had it since 80, and it's really been part of the soundtrack of my life since then. To me, this is a perfect album, beginning to end.
It is.
I should have gotten the quote that Charlie Benante said when I interviewed him about this album, and he said that the reason that AC/DC has never released the greatest hits album is because they recorded Back in Black, is what he said to me. This album is huge. We talked about the lyrics to Let Me Put My Love Into You, a ballad, which, if you research the lyrics, is crude as all hell, but it works. And I mentioned Jesse Fink before. Jesse Fink wrote the book on the Youngs, and he feels that with his research that there are several songs off of this album that were written by Bon Scott. He thinks that song specifically, and he said "You Shook Me All Night Long," he feels were specifically written by Bon, just by how the lyrics are, how they're not as straightforward and crude as some of Brian's lyrics. They're a lot more clever when it comes to the sexual innuendo that's being discussed during the lyrics. So we'll probably never know, because I don't think Angus Young will ever write a book on that. Brian Johnson does not like Jesse Fink at all. Because of this, there were spats going back and forth on the internet due to some of the stuff in his book, which Brian retorted in his own book. But anyway, the music is what is important here. Who wants to talk on Back in Black? Let's see, Adrian.
Yeah, I like this song, and and if it wasn't for Give That Doggy a Bone, it wouldn't be my top 3 and the most number 2.
Okay. So just because of Giving the Dog a Bone, it's your number 3.
Yes.
Okay. Cool. Going with a deep cut.
That's funny.
Oh, is that a pun there?
Why is that? Because I said it was.
Jeremy got it. Thanks, Jeremy.
Okay.
This is why Jeremy and I need to hang out. Yeah.
Roman, go ahead.
I really like this album. I really like most of the songs. And I don't know why I didn't put Back in Black higher in the list, because I really like all of the most of the songs.
Yeah, this was what, your number 3?
Yes.
Well, but that's a good problem to have, is that if a discography is so good that you can flip-flop any one of these albums that means that that it's a great band, that the band is connected with you, the band has spoken to you, and you can again, switch between this or any or Power Age, or what was your number one? Oh, Power Up.
Power up.
So awesome, Dan. I see that you've got your mic loaded there.
Yeah, so I've discussed this. I've said this before. Do you remember where I was when the album came out? And this is also another one that I know the day it came out. So tragically, Bon Scott had died before this album came out, and that had made the news. And people weren't sure at the time of what AC/DC was going to be. There wasn't advance release copies of anything like that. So I know what happened the day that it came out is my neighbor got it on the album, and he put it on, and he opened all of his windows, as we used to do back in the day, to brag what you got. And he turned it up as loud as he could, and it gives me goosebumps now, the opening riff to Back in Black with all that. And he was screaming his head off inside of the house of how amazing this album, Back in Black, is. He couldn't believe it. And then I heard it from my lawn outside going, oh my God, they've done it. They've captured the magic. This is amazing. We didn't know if AC/DC was going to die, with Brian or what's going to happen, but here it was. So, I can still picture today. But going on to great lyrics and great songs on this album, Shake a Leg is one of my favorite. It's high energy. And in the lyrics, he says, big licks, skin flicks, tricky dicks are my chemistry. I love that. Where does he come up with that? Every time he does that, I turn that up a little bit louder.
That song is so awesome.
Yeah.
You just brought up a good point with your neighbor, though, because although Back in Black is the first song on side 2, how many people would play this album side 2 first and then side 1? Just because the 1-2 punch on side 2 was Back in Black and You Shook Me All Night Long. Because I know for us, there were times where we would play it that way.
Yeah, it was track 1, side 1. I just remember the hearing that come in because it starts off low, but it was magical.
I've got my. Oh, sorry. Go on, Brad.
No. You're on a roll. Go.
No, I was just going to say, I've got my original copy, and the track listing is different on the back to the way it plays as well. And I just wondered whether they made some last-minute changes. I think they made a mistake, really. I think they should have opened with Back in Black and not had Hell's Bells as the very first track, because obviously that's what they were doing. They were coming back in black. So for me, it's not their best album either, but it's certainly the most important AC/DC album of all time. It's not the best because there's a few fillers on this album, really, when you think about it. And if you listen to it, I know you're going to disagree because some of you think it's magnificent, but for me, it's not their best. Some of it sounds a little bit tired now, but for me, it is the most important album because of what happened and what Dan was saying. I remember the day when Bon Scott died, and I remember thinking that AC/DC were finished, and they had to come back in some sort of fashion, and we weren't sure what Brian Johnson would be like, and we didn't have internet in those days. And I'd like to ask Roman, how old are you?
12.
Okay, so I was a year older than you. I was a year older than you when this album came out. I was 13 years old, and it hit me like a hammer. It was so good at the time. So you just have to sort of think back to when it came out, really.
The order of the songs, just so you know, that was a thing that they would do back then, because Van Halen's 1984 is the same exact thing. Kiss's Dynasty, Yes's 90125, they all have the songs on the back, but in a different order. For some reason, that's what labels were doing in the end of the 70s, early 80s. So not sure why. Brad, go ahead.
Yeah, and you guys probably aren't going to believe this, but I have never listened to this album until this last week. And I got to say, I was shocked that it didn't start off, because I just, I was streaming it, so it's not like I was looking at the track list or anything. And when I put it on, I expected Back in Black to be the first song. And I was like, holy crap. Oh, but I kind of get it, the Hell's Bells thing. But it would have, and then I totally got the side one and side two. So when Back in Black came on, I go, okay, this is side two. And I actually think it's kind of cool that they did it that way, and kind of saved the, that for side two. Also, the interesting thing, never having listened to the album before, is that I knew every single song on this album. So yeah, I mean, I was like, wow, how is it I've heard every single song on this album before without ever listening to the album? That just goes to show you the power of this album and how it's just everywhere. It's ubiquitous. I also thought about, because I listened to everything in order, coming from Highway to Hell and going into this, and I'm thinking, as a band trying to deal with the loss of a huge part of the band, and the shoes that Brian Johnson was filling here, he did an unbelievable job. I mean, he didn't sound anything like Bon, but yet the band sounded like AC/DC. It's not like, this doesn't sound like AC/DC. It's not like, okay, you use the Van Halen thing. When Sammy Hagar came in there, it was like, this isn't Van Halen. This was definitely AC/DC. And they picked the right guy. I mean, you think about all the other names that were out there for, possibly filling Bond's shoes, and they picked the right guy. Brian did an unbelievable job, so good on him.
Johan, Back in Black. Hello, Johan.
Yes.
Back in Black.
Yeah. Good album. Not my favorite, but Shut Down in Flames is...
Great song.
Yeah.
That's Highway to Hell, though.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
Shoot to Thrill.
Shoot
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I knew what you meant, Johan. I knew
Yeah.
exactly the song you were going for there. And that's one of my favorite AC/DC songs. So
That's the best second song on a concert ever made. So it's a good album, but it's not my favorite, but absolutely great album. It's like British Steel, for Judas Priest. It's like we heard it, overplayed, and but sure, very important album.
Cool. Ed?
I think it's perfect. Every note, every lick, the track listing, the order, everything is awesome. This was my introduction to AC/DC, mainly because everybody had it. So I had, like my best friend, I was able to get my hands on his copy and snuck it home. And anytime my parents weren't around, I would put that on and listen to as much as I could. And man, I've never heard anything so amazing. Especially the song Hell's Bells. I think that's one of the greatest rock songs ever. Although Hell's Bells would always out me, because my mom kind of caught on to the bell sound, and the title of the song freaks him out.
it wasn't church.
So this is probably the album that I bought the most, having it taken away. And then after I got some more money from mowing the yard, sneak back over to the mall and, buy a cassette tape and sneak it back in.
That's awesome.
And I love this rap. I love that metal. Dan mentioned Shake a Leg.
Yeah.
Man, so much energy in that song. It's just, I would love to see that one played live someday. I know that actually that's one tune that sometimes critics don't give much love on that record, and I don't understand why. That's a song they could easily put in their regular set list, and it would be a hit.
Yep.
I think that the 4 songs that don't get the same attention as the rest, which is basically what he do for Money Honey, giving the dog a bone, have a drink on me, and shake a leg, and even have a drink on me got played a decent amount on U.S. radio.
Yeah.
But the other three are kind of they're like hidden gems. I think they're as good as the other tracks. And a lot of times, because the album has been played so much, I'll just focus on those songs because they get me in that mood that this album normally does, without having to go into some of the songs that we've heard a million times. But yeah, I mean, the listening to Hell's Bells, I remember for the first time, is just, what is this? You know, is this supposed to be evil? Is it supposed to be church? Is it, I mean, what's going on here, you know? So,
And also, we have to acknowledge the greatness of Angus and his guitar solos. I mean, every one of those solos I can sing in my head right now. They're so memorable. It's just amazing how that whole band has been able to take, you know, Chuck Berry rock and roll, and then write so many songs over and over, albums after album, songs that are all memorable.
yeah.
And it's just, and that includes his guitar solos. It's amazing what they've been able to do as a band.
And that's what Angus would warble when he speaks, that you can barely understand him, but he'd credit Chuck Berry, and he does that Chuck Berry duck walk when he does it. They're
That's
just
right.
totally influenced by it, and they took it to another level.
And he was my guitar hero, Angus Young, when I'm 13, 14 years old. When I would see footage of him and his energy, you know, it was Ace Frehley up until I learned about Angus Young. And, you know, his energy just it perfectly matches that of a 14-year-old kid that's angry and bouncing off the walls and wants to rock and roll and have fun.
And now I look in the background and I see Malcolm, and now I'm more of a Malcolm person, where he's just holding that groove and having a good time. You know, he must have enjoyed what he was doing live every night. Even though he was the backup to Angus, he gets so much credit now, more than he's ever.
Well, he wasn't the backup. Do you know why Malcolm chose to not play solos?
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so he realized that if Angus was the only one doing a guitar solo, that meant that he could go behind the amps and have a beer while his brother was soloing. So that's early on. He decided, yeah, I don't want a solo. I'd prefer to drink a beer.
That's awesome.
I used to read in the magazines that Angus would run an average of 4 miles, you know, back and forth on the stage every concert.
Not surprising.
He was both punk and rock and roll.
Yeah. Yeah, I had a basketball player who injured her ankle, and she was doing the duck walk to get to one of the other gyms where we were playing. And I told her, who do you think you are, Angus Young? I had to explain the reference to her. At least she understood it. So,
yeah, I love those interviews with the Young brothers, and they're wrapped in their towels after a show. They're drinking tea. I don't, you know, you can kind of barely understand them. They got the smokes. They were something. They're amazing.
yeah.
So who here has seen the earliest AC/DC concert?
Ooh.
Brad, have you been to an AC/DC
No,
concert?
I've never
haven't
seen
even listened to the record, which is one of the stranger things I've heard somebody say.
Yeah, I'm out on this one. So
It's not me. I saw them with Queensryche on the Warning tour, so that was probably 85. I think was my first time.
So Fly on the
86.
Wall.
84.
So, but I don't go back. I've never seen Bond. I'm not that old.
What about you, Jeremy?
First time I ever saw them was 2008 on the Black Ice tour.
Wow.
You win, Metal Dan.
I didn't even try, but I appreciate them so much, and I don't know why I didn't go see them more often. There was just always just a big rock show, you know. So there was always a stadium. It's just a big place to see them.
You could always just go out in the desert, pay $1 million to see them in 2 weeks or whenever.
All it takes is money. I know, honey.
Yeah,
Not doing it.
so, awesome. So I want to thank Brad, Ed, Johan, Roman, Adrian, Metal Dan, and the problem child himself, Mr. Patron's Pick, Jeremy Weltman.
But his mother loves him.
Absolutely. Who doesn't love Jeremy? That's my question. Anyway, thanks all of you guys for being here. Thanks anyone who is listening or watching the replay of this. Thank
Who is
you.
that? Is that Tony that just commented?
No, that's Jose. Thank you, Jose and Tony, for being in the chat. And thanks as always. Go to signalsfrommars.com for more information on the podcast, to check out the full list.
There's Tony.
And to let us know on social media. Drop us a line. Let us know what you think about the top 10. Did your favorite make it? Or like Jeremy, do you not like Back in Black? What?
Jeremy's not going to go to sleep tonight. I fully expected him to have a Johan moment where he's yelling and screaming at us.
He was close. On that note, folks, we will see you next time right here on the Signals from Mars live stream and podcast. See you, folks.
Thank you for watching the Signals from Mars live stream. You can watch the show live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Twitch, or check out replays on YouTube. Go to signalsfrommars.com for more information. This concludes our show.